This week on The Grit Crusade.
And you want to figure out how to get from where you are to where it is you would like to be, or just anywhere but where you are. And if you're looking for a soft place to land and a journey to talk through today and to hear some truth breathed in to where you're at in life right now, this is the episode for you. Hey Grit Crusaders, I'm Brooke, your host here today on the Grit Crusade podcast, and I'm so excited that you're tuning in today. If it's your first time, welcome, and if you're a returning guest, welcome back. I do not believe that you are here by accident today. I believe that you were drawn to this episode for a reason. You saw the title, you're experiencing burnout or maybe fatigue in your life, and you want to figure out how to get from where you are to where it is you would like to be, or just anywhere but where you are. And if you're looking for a soft place to land and a journey to talk through today and to hear some truth breathed in to where you're at in life right now, this is the episode for you. So my goal over the next 20 minutes is for us to leave the episode together feeling refreshed, refueled, and knowing some next steps we can take to make some small changes in our lives to help us get out of this burnout season that we may have found ourselves in. And I always believe that sometimes we want to eat the whole elephant at once, but if we just take one small bite each day, getting closer to where it is we want to go, we can make all the difference in our lives. So today's episode I've got laid out just a little bit different. So we're going to talk about some definitions of these words and then talk about how they show up in our life and kind of what we can do about it. So we're going to be using some Webster definitions. So they aren't made up by Brooke. They are the real definitions. But before I start with that, just to remind you to be sure and please subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. And also if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to turn those notifications on and subscribe to our show, because that allows us to get out there and spread our message to more people. This is more, this episode, this podcast, this mission is about so much more than just getting more listeners and more followers. It's about changing lives and impacting the real things, the grit, the hard stuff in life, and helping us get out of those trenches together. So first we're going to start with the word burnout. And here is the Webster definition. And, former English teacher here, hello. So yes, I know there are more than one definition. So if you go look up Webster right now, you'll see there's more than one definition. I just decided for, time purposes to choose the one that most closely align with what we're talking about today. So in Webster, the noun, and I'm sharing the noun and verb version for a reason. The noun form of burnout is this: exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged, get ready, stress and frustration. You ever felt that? The verb, like this resonates in my soul. Like I feel like this has been etched onto my being. To cause to fail, wear out, or become exhausted, especially from overwork or overuse. Ugh, right? And I think that anyone that's past their teenage years have experienced burnout in their life in one way or the other. And if they haven't, please write a book for the rest of us, because we're all wading through this together. But here are some ways to kind of help us relate to burnout. So if you're like, well, maybe I'm burnt out, maybe I'm not, I'm just not really happy with where I'm at. Here's some ways that WebMD, these are some symptoms of burnout. So I didn't make this up either. And this could be in your career, it could be in your relationships, it could be the stage of life you're in. But here are 5 different symptoms that could show up as burnout in your life. And these are pretty profound, so get ready. Number 1, you're exhausted. Earth to Americans and everyone worldwide, it is not normal to live tired. You heard it from me. I say it again for the people in the back. It is not normal to live tired. So if you are living tired, fatigue, which we'll talk about in just a minute, is a physical symptom of something. It could be a physical symptom of a bigger medical illness, which I'm not a doctor, so I wouldn't pretend to prescribe that. It could be a symptom of burnout and what you're putting yourself through every day. Number 2, ways to know that you're burned out. Your attitude has changed. You've turned cynical, lack of interest, you're negative, you're callous, you're seeing the blah in every situation. You are the Debbie Downer in the room. Number 3, your emotions have changed. You're feeling useless, like you can't be effective, that you're not accomplishing anything or being productive. You're depressed. Burnout's a job thing. Depressed is a life thing. Everything gets under your skin and you're short-fused. Is that you? Number 4, you have medical or physical symptoms. Burnout can physically and medically cause issues with your body. You're not sleeping, headaches that are not caused by something else. You have pain in your gut, knots, ulcers, high blood pressure. And here's the one that gets us, especially in that middle age, 30s to 50s. You are escaping to drinking, drugs, or other comforts or addiction. Overeating, porn, gaming, partying, never being home because you're always running away from something. Okay, keeping your kids busy 24/7 so you never have time to sit still. It's an addiction, y'all. Busyness is an addiction. But our minds and our bodies, they're like a gas tank, okay? So there's a spout where stuff has to come in, but there's always a drain tube going out that's fueling everything that we do. And if we're not careful, that gas tank will get so low that we are burned out and we cannot go on, because then it starts manifesting in those physical ways. And if you don't sleep, you can't function. If you can't function, you can't be productive, and so on and so on. And it's a vicious, vicious cycle. But if we can fuel that gas tank up, that helps us get over that weariness. That helps us have that clarity of mindset to be able to start thinking about what is it that I do want in life. If I'm here and I don't want to be here, what do I want? And so one of the things we mentioned too that goes along with burnout is fatigue. And here's your Webster definition of fatigue: weariness or exhaustion from labor, exertion, and do not miss this last word if you don't hear anything else in the podcast, stress. Just being stressed can cause fatigue. That's right. You don't even got to get off the couch to have fatigue. Fatigue is not the same thing as tired. And like I said, with being tired, it can be medical. So I'm not trying to diagnose every cause of fatigue here. I am acknowledging that there are medical things that come up. But having chronic fatigue, life fatigue, depression, these are all things that we have to acknowledge and look at in the face. And the truth is, we've all been there. And if you haven't been there, write us, the rest of us, a book. Because whether it's been at work, you may love your job, so it may not be that you're burned out at work, but it might be in another area. But here's how it showed up for me. And it came in 2023, last year. This episode's being recorded in 24. I was burned out. I had launched 4 businesses and 1 nonprofit in less than 9 years. In that same time, I had birthed a child, nursed for 6 months. Hello, that is a full-time mom for any of you ones with youngsters and nursing, while working and pumping through meetings. I got married. I bought a fixer-upper that literally never ends. We had bats, rats, molds, insulation issues, all the time, the money, and the frustration that went into fixing that. And all of this burnout was manifesting into my work and my marriage. And I knew I didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to experience a 4th divorce. I didn't want to split up my child's home. I didn't want to sell or close my businesses or the nonprofit that I love so much and worked so hard to get off the ground. I didn't want to let go of any of those things per se, but I didn't want to be like that. And maybe that's where you're finding yourself today. But I also didn't really know what to do about it. And maybe that's how you feel, and that's why you were drawn to this podcast. Maybe you acknowledged, if you acknowledge that you're in a place of burnout and fatigue, I commend you, because that's the first step. Realizing this is where I am, but this is not where I want to be. That's the first step to freedom. That's the first step of getting out of your head, getting out of your current circumstances, and starting to take those bite-sized steps in the right direction. And so before I share with you what I did next and a few steps that I learned along the way, we're going to take a break from the heavy. And we're all going to take a deep breath. Yes, for real. We're all going to do it at the same time. Me, Rebecca's behind the camera. We're going to do it all at the same time. Are you ready? Breathe in, inhale. and exhale. Okay, big deep breath from all that burnout that we just acknowledged, because that's a lot of weight to carry. Like, you might have to pause right here, and that's fine. But just make sure you come back and finish the episode, because you're going to want to hear, what do I do now? But we're going to take a little fun break and do my favorite segment on the podcast called Trivia in the Trenches. So if you've never listened before, Trivia in the Trenches is where I try to stump you, the listener, or if I have a guest on the podcast, I'll try to stump them. All right, here we go. So this Trivia in the Trenches is from my History Facts email this morning. I normally get our trivia from randomtriviagenerator.com, but today's came from our History Facts email. So we'll link both of those in the show notes for you too. Here we go. What everyday food item did the United States ban in 1943? Sliced bread. What? I know. So we were in the middle of World War II, and the Secretary of Agriculture, Claude R. Wickard, announced a ban on selling sliced bread in effort to conserve what they called wartime resources. So they hoped the ban would preserve the country's supply of alloyed steel, which was used in the machines that was slicing the bread, and wax paper, which was used to wrap the sliced bread, and it was thicker than unsliced loaves. And it would protect the military equipment from the elements. And it was common practice to ask Americans back home to ration goods in the name of the war effort. But the ban on sliced bread was met with furious and immediate backlash from the housewives. And one woman named Sue Forster wrote to the New York Times this: I should like to let you know how important sliced bread is to the morale and saneness of a household. And then the hotels and restaurants were given a 60-day grace period, but the bakeries were not, and they saw a sales decline of 10%. And very quickly, less than 2 months later, they lifted the ban because, quote unquote, the savings were not as much as they expected. So, sometimes we make these decisions and things don't turn out. All done that in our lives and our businesses, whether it's relationships, whether we've started a program and it didn't get off the ground like we wanted it to. We just got to make the next best step. But sliced bread, really, I was really surprised by that one. And when I read it this morning, I was like, that is our trivia for today. We have to have that trivia for today. Okay, back to our topic. We've acknowledged our burnout and our fatigue, but we may not know what's causing it. Okay, so we're going to get there. So here are some things that we can do about it. And the first thing is not researched. This is not anything I've ever found on the internet. This is an epiphany I had in my personal life that I like to call the 12-12 connection. Okay? So once I started implementing the 12-12 connection in my life, my sleep was so much better. My moods were so much better. And the days I don't do it, I can tell. And so let me tell you what I mean by that. 12 hours on, 12 hours off. The world gets me for 12 hours. And for 12 hours, I'm not the world's anymore. Okay? So for 12 hours, for me, that shows up 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. From 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., I'm answering social media messages. I'm answering emails. I'm working with my teams. I'm doing things for my family. All the stuff, running errands, groceries, all that stuff. But by 8 p.m., that's over. At 8 p.m., I'm in bed with Crew, reading his books at night, which is my 6-year-old son. And the world does not get me after 8. I'm not checking emails. I'm not checking our team's messages. I'm not responding on social media. Like, I am no longer the world's after 8 p.m. And between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., I do me. Okay? I get my house picked up. I go to bed. I read. I go work out in the morning. I listen to scripture. I make my lemon water. I have my celery juice. I get my protein bar. And then the world can have me back. Okay? And maybe you're like, girl, I can't do all that in 10 hours or 12 hours. Then make it 10. Do a 14-10 split. Okay? Do a 16-8 split. And slowly work your way there. But you have got to set some boundaries around your life, because Earth, to everyone else out there, the cell phone was only invented 50 years ago. And the world has been around for thousands of years without being able to get a hold of everybody on a dime. And it is okay if it takes you a little bit to call somebody back. And if they can't respect your boundaries, you may need to see if they're the ones draining your fuel tank. Because that is not up for someone else to decide. You can put those boundaries around what's going to be your time or your family time or your friend time with those people that you love the most, and put the rest of the world out. Because sitting there constantly just scrolling through social media, you are giving yourself to other people. You are giving them your time, your attention, your thoughts, sometimes your drama and your stress. But that's not okay. They don't get that from you. You get to decide who gets what from you, not everybody else. And once you see that and you make that switch and realize I have the control, I'm the one in the driver's seat here. I get to pick if that gets my time, my attention, my focus. They don't get to suck it out of you. Okay, so I call that the 12-12 connection. It may be the 14-10 connection for you, but 12-12 works perfect for me. Maybe 9 to 9. Maybe you go to work at 7 and 7 o'clock you're not done. So maybe you're a 7 to 9 person that the world has you, but then 9 to 7 they don't. But making that distinction, even in your brain, you're able to give yourself permission to turn it off. And that's what we need. We need that permission to turn it off because we can't be on stage all the time. We can't. We're humans. We require rest for a reason. Okay, so that's the first thing, is figuring out how to set those boundaries. Because if you don't take control of that, nobody's going to do it for you. The world will continue to suck the life out of you unless you decide to not let it. Okay? The next thing is focusing on all the areas of your life, not just work. So many times when we're talking about burnout, it has to do with ministry or work or wherever you're spending the majority of your time, okay? These 9 domains are, and I'm going to say them twice. So if you listen to them the first time, then you can go to your notes in your phone or on your planner or whatever and write them down the second time. So the 9 domains of life are love, work, family, mind, body, spirit, hobbies, community, and money. Did I say money twice? Let's try that again. Love, work, family, spiritual, hobbies, money, body, mind, connection. And when we begin to ignore one or more of these life domains, as Michael Hyatt calls them, we inadvertently throw ourselves out of balance. And so I'm going to say them again one more time in case you need to take notes. Love, work, family, spiritual, hobbies, money, body, mind, community. Okay? And if you haven't listened to the podcast episodes that came before this, the Take Control of Your Life and Get Back on Track, we will link those in the show notes as well. Those are 2 great episodes after you finish this one to kind of start getting, okay, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to make the right decisions. And then what happens when you get off track? Because you're always going to get off track. So when we ignore more than one of these domains in our lives, and I will say this, love and spiritual are optional. So if you are not in a romantic relationship and not pursuing one, then you don't have to really pay attention to that area. And if you're not a spiritual person or do not believe in God, then that area is also optional. But the rest, you can't ignore any of them. You just can't. Because you're setting yourself up for tension, stress, and here's our word. What's the word of the episode? Rhymes with smurnout. Burnout, right? So you're setting yourself up for tension, unnecessary tension, stress, and burnout if you start to ignore one of those domains. For example, you may be like, I don't need community. I'm an introvert. Really, Sarah? Come on now. Why were you put on this earth? Like, if you didn't need community, would God just not put you on here and let you be the one soul survivor that was left? Like, I feel like I'm thinking of like a Will Smith movie and him walking through like Independence Day. Okay. I mean, you could have also get married and never have sex, but why would you do that? Like my preacher says, like, what would be the point? Why would you limit yourself? Like, if you're going to be on the planet, you got to be connected. So community does matter. That doesn't mean you have to go play bingo downtown, but it does mean that you need another human or 2 or 3 on the planet that you can connect with and talk to about real things. Even if it's not in person, it could be virtual. You can have virtual community. But it's important that you connect with people because when you don't, that depression and loneliness and feeling like you're the only one who's ever felt that way, had that pain, experienced that, that's when that stuff starts to creep in more and more and more. Okay, it's the same thing with money. You could live broke forever, but why would you? Like, why do you want that stress when you can learn everything you need to know about budgeting and finance and debt reduction online for free? Yeah, Mike, I said it. Because if tomorrow the stork fairy shows up on your front porch and drops you a winning lottery ticket, newsflash, you're still going to be broke because you have the same habits. So if you carry those same bad habits on that you're doing right now, you're going to end up in the same place. But if you start to focus on money and look at it and go, how do I want to be in 5 years? Maybe in 5 years, you want to be able to go to the grocery store when you need to. You want to be able to pay your bills and you want to be able to be debt free. Then let's start working on that today. Not next week, not the first of next year, today. Why wait? You don't need that calendar to turn to change. You can do it right now. And everything you need to know is online for free. TikTok they're wonderful resources. But you're the only one that can decide that you want to learn that something new. You're the only one that has the pin to your life. No one else has the pin to your life. Not your husband, not your best friend that doesn't talk to you anymore, not your kids that don't answer your phone calls. It's you. It's on you. And let's talk about your body. Another one of the 9 domains. You got to take care of it. And this one's going to be a trigger and hit home for some people, and I mean for it to be. So don't pause and close the episode in the middle of this one. You can close it right after I finish this point, but don't close it in the middle of this one. Listen to me when I say obesity is not the same thing as laziness. But right now, in 2024, 42.7% of people are obese, which means over 40% of people listening to this episode right now are obese. And you know what? It's not your fault. Did you hear me? It is not your fault. But you can take a baby step. You can make a vote for you today. You can call the bariatric clinic. You can call your doctor. You can explore shots. It's not cheating. It is saving the systems in your body from shutting down. And why wouldn't you do it? Over 200 diseases are comorbid with obesity, which means if you are obese, over 40% of you are that are listening right now, those other diseases are coming. Those are diseases like high blood pressure, heart failure, diabetes, PCOS, infertility, COVID, sleep apnea, arthritis, degenerative disc disease. Those can all go away. You can take care of you, but again, nobody's going to do it for you. But you got to take care of your body, because if you don't, it limits everything else. It limits your relationships. It limits your ability to function, mentally. It limits everything. When you're sick, you know you can't push through. Not forever, maybe for just a little bit. But you got to make that vote for you. That's important. Those kind of things help avoid burnout. When you start to realize that it's not just about work. Life is not just about work. That is one of the 9 domains. One. What are you doing with the other 8 or 7 or 6 if you're not focusing on a couple? That's up to you. And I could go on and on about how we are not these simple beings. We are so innately interconnected together. And it's so important that we are like that all the time. We're not just work. We're not just family. We're not just a girlfriend. We're all those things in one bucket, and we can't separate them. Now, we can be stronger in certain areas than others, and that's okay. Everyone has natural strengths in certain areas, but that means we got to acknowledge and focus on the other areas. But you have the pen. So first, you got to learn to create those boundaries. For me, it's a 12-12. What is it for you? Put it in the comments. Maybe it's a 14-10. You going to try a 14-10 out? You going to try a 16-8 out? What is it? And how did it work for you? Like, come back and tell me, is this working? Like, I need feedback. Let me know. And secondly, you've got to recognize those domains that you're neglecting and fix them. We're going to drop some links in the comments too in the show notes. So whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, that has a free life assessment. So it'll help you be able to look at those 9 domains and see how you're doing in those areas. Because the next easiest step to take in each domain is where your progress is going to be. Like, for example, what could you do today to improve your hobbies? Maybe you're like me, and I found myself in 2021, and I didn't have one single hobby. Nothing. But you know what? Now I hike. Not good at it. Not fast. I garden. I kill more plants than I keep alive. But it's not my profession. I'm not making money doing it. I don't have to be great. I just have to enjoy it and find fulfillment. And that's what it is. So you can try a hobby and you can totally blow at it. It can be no good. And that's okay. And if you do it and you try it, you go to bingo and you don't like bingo, don't go back to bingo. Go try something else. That's all right. It's your life. But whenever it was, we gave somebody else the pen and we started to listen to what they were saying and we started letting them write the script for our lives, that's where we got off track. And that's where the burnout came from. And lastly, spend some time reflecting on what's actually causing you the burnout. What does that look like? That's you in a notebook, sitting by yourself in silence. That's you sitting on the porch in a rocking chair. That's you down at the lake. That's you taking an overnight trip to, the town next to you and staying in a hotel. That's you sitting in the car rider line without the radio or an audiobook playing for 20 minutes. However you can fit it in. That's you getting up early. But what's actually causing you the burnout? Because sometimes we feel this way and we don't know how we got there. I can tell you all day long how to get out of there, but it's not going to do any good unless you know how you got there in the first place. And maybe it's you have a community group of friends. You're like, oh, I got friends. But are they the ones causing you all the drama and stress? Maybe you need to get rid of them. Maybe you have a relationship that's so toxic that it's constantly affecting every other domain of your life. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. I'm not the girl to tell you to sit here and stay in unhealthy, unsafe relationships. Emotional and mental abuse is real. Get out of there. Whether it's a friend, a romantic partner, go. Start making those steps. If you don't know what that first step is, take one tiny one. Get a therapist. Get a coach. And maybe it's that you realize that you need to get a new job. Or maybe you need to work on a promotion because you've just been sitting back letting everybody else get the promotions. Get a business coach. They can help you. You can find them online. There's group coaching programs. There's one-on-one coaching programs. But if you don't change, just like I said about your habits about money, if you don't change the way you also think about work, your mindset about it, that everybody owes you something or that I just never get picked or it's never me or it's never my turn, you're going to take those same habits into the next job. And you're going to feel the same way there 6 months later. But you got to take stock. Take stock of why did you get here? How did you get to burnout? And when I found myself last year of how did I get to this point of having all these great things going on in my life and I am exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do. I had to realize that I created it. And then I had to realize, I had to identify what was sucking the energy out of me, and I had to remove it. I had to get it out of my circle. And everything changed after that. I had clarity again. I had purpose again. I had vision again. But I had to get rid of some of the noise. And that was amazing. That was an amazing step for me. But it took me realizing not only was I in a place I didn't want to be in, which is hard, but I was the one who designed that place. I picked it. I built it. And I didn't like it. So guess what? Damn sure nobody else was coming in to change it. I had to. And I had to look myself in the mirror. And so when I started realizing this is why I'm here, limiting the time the world has me so I can work on these other domains, everything started balancing out. It will change the way you see the world. And then the world will start seeing you different too. So today I'm going to close a little bit different than I normally do. I'm going to close with some parting questions for you to consider. And you may want to pause after every one of these questions. Do that. Or you can pause and write down and then write the next question and then contemplate them over the next week. But if you want to discuss these with me, if you want more ideas, if you want help with next steps, you can always email me at chat@brookeplack.com. And I'm here. I love connecting with our listeners. I love being able to share the hard stuff I went through so that somebody else may be able to not have to go through the same stuff I did. So here are your parting questions for today. Are you happy with your life? If you held the pen, what would you change? What's stopping you from changing it? And what would it make possible if you made those changes? Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Grit Crusade. I'm Brooke Plack. Join me again next week on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. This podcast is produced by ClintonCreative.com.